A U.S. official told AP a tentative 60-day ceasefire extension is agreed, but that official was, quote, not authorized to speak on it. Iran's foreign minister is publicly refusing to characterize the outcome, and Trump reportedly sent the draft back for tougher terms. This is Iran War Daily. I'm Cassidy. We've got diplomacy and military activity moving at the same time, and CENTCOM just put a number on the blockade for the first time. 118 commercial vessels redirected, 5 disabled.
I'm Brian, and one of those, the Gambia-flagged Leon Star, took a U.S. missile into its engine room on May 31st. We should talk about what redirected is doing in that sentence.
So we've got the tentative deal, the draft sent back for edits, Iraqi declining to say anything definitive, and a named vessel hit by a named military command on a named date. That's today's show. Fox 23 writes,
U.S. and Iranian negotiators have reached a tentative agreement to extend the ceasefire by 60 days and start a new round of talks on Iran's nuclear program. That's according to a U.S. official familiar with the matter who spoke Thursday to the Associated Press. The official was not authorized to comment publicly and spoke on condition of anonymity.
So that MOU thread from last episode has moved again. What started as a time-buying proposal is now being described as a tentative 60-day ceasefire extension by a U.S. official to AP, on background and not authorized to comment publicly. Vance said Thursday evening that there's a tentative agreement, but said Trump's approval is unclear. So you've got one anonymous voice and one named one pointing the same way, and Iran still hasn't confirmed anything.
Vance says tentative, the source isn't authorized to speak, Trump may reject it, Tehran hasn't said a word, and we're supposed to call that a deal? The headline and the fine print fell apart in the same news cycle.
And the framing matters. Arachi's public line was, no judgment until the final outcome. Trump reportedly sent the draft back for tougher modifications. Those are on-the-record signals pointing away from closure, even while Vance is pointing toward it. And that gap is the story today.
And while all the diplomatic throat-clearing was happening, CENTCOM logged 118 commercial vessels redirected through Hormuz and a U.S. missile into the engine room of the Leon Star, a Gambia-flagged cargo ship, on May 31st. A missile into a commercial hull is not a blockade posture. That's a different operational reality, and nobody in this tentative agreement story is pricing it in.
Here's New Kerala.
Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi has revealed that dialogue and an exchange of messages are ongoing between Tehran and Washington, despite the current deadlock in talks. According to a report by the Iranian news agency IRNA, Araghchi stated that it is not possible to judge until a clear conclusion is reached. Everything that is being said now is speculation and should not be taken seriously until it is certain.
Araghchi's line to IRNA today, everything being said now is speculation, lands the same day an unauthorized U.S. official told AP there's a tentatively agreed 60-day ceasefire extension. Those two statements don't line up, and the sourcing gap between them matters.
Trump sent the draft back for tougher terms. Araghchi says don't judge anything, and the only named U.S. voice on the tentative deal wasn't authorized to speak. So the headline and the fine print were contradicting each other before there was even a signed page.
Worth noting, Kalibov is publicly saying there's no deal without securing Iran's rights, and Araghchi is publicly refusing to characterize the outcome. Those are two different Iranian institutional voices in the same negotiation, and they're not saying the same thing.
Meanwhile, Bagheri already drew a red line around uranium stockpiles in Moscow. Trump just hardened the U.S. ask, and the 60-day extension is supposedly the win. That's buying time for a fight that hasn't even started yet, and I'm not calling that a question anymore.
Here's Parisa Hafezi, Angus McDowell, Michael Georgie at Defense News.
The United States and Iran have reached an agreement to extend a ceasefire, allow shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, and lift a U.S. blockade and some sanctions on Iran, sources told Reuters. But the deal has not been finalized. An agreement would represent a big step toward ending a war that has pushed the world toward an energy crisis, though the underlying dispute over Iran's nuclear program would only be thrashed out in talks over subsequent weeks.
Reuters is now running 4 sources familiar with the matter on a memorandum of understanding: ceasefire extension, Hormuz shipping access, partial sanctions relief. But even the peace flags that both sides have called a deal close before and never closed one. That caveat is doing a lot of work.
An MOU that pauses the war and buys 60 days to negotiate the real fight, the nuclear file, the frozen assets, Hezbollah. That's not an agreement. That's a rain check. And we already know Trump sent the draft back for tougher modifications, while Arachi was publicly refusing to characterize outcomes. The headline and the fine print are already fighting each other.
Hold this against the CENTCOM ledger from May 31st. 118 commercial vessels redirected, 5 disabled, and the Lian Star hit by a U.S. missile inside the reported ceasefire window. If the MOU includes lifting the blockade, those 5 disabled hulls are the baseline it has to unwind from. That's not abstract. That's the operational reality any Hormuz language has to answer.
A missile into the Lian Star's engine room happened while a tentative deal was reportedly on the table. Gambia-flagged commercial cargo vessel. That is not a blockade posture. That is a hull loss event. And anybody writing shipping insurance for Hormuz transits right now is pricing in 5 disabled ships and counting. The MOUs talk about allowing shipping through the strait has to deal with what CENTCOM was actually doing on May 31st.
Iran International writes, CENTCOM posted a cumulative ledger on May 31st. 118 commercial vessels redirected, 5 disabled, attributed to the U.S. blockade against Iran. That's a named command, a named date, specific numbers, and for the first time this week, we have an operational scale to set against any MOU language about Hormuz shipping access.
5 disabled vessels isn't a posture signal, that's a hull loss series, and disabled is doing a lot of quiet work in that sentence. The Lian Star took a missile into its engine room on May 31st, also confirmed by CENTCOM, also inside the reported ceasefire window. At what point does redirected stop being the right word?
Timing matters here. CENTCOM logged the Lian Star strike. Gambia-flagged commercial vessel, engine room hit. On the same day it posted the 118 vessel count, and both sit inside the window of a tentative ceasefire extension that an unauthorized U.S. official described to AP. 2 tracks, 1 date, and no reconciliation from any named official.
The shipping insurance market is not reading tentative ceasefire extension. It's reading 5 disabled hulls and a missile into a cargo ship's engine room. That's the real economy signal, and it is not pointing toward de-escalation.
From ABC News.
The U.S. military has fired a missile into the engine room of a merchant vessel trying to break through its blockade of Iranian ports, the Central Command says. The ship remains adrift in the Gulf of Oman, and U.S. forces have not boarded it, a U.S. official with knowledge of the situation says, speaking on condition of anonymity.
CENTCOM confirmed it on May 31st. A U.S. missile into the engine room of the Lian Star, a Gambia-flagged cargo vessel. After more than 20 warnings were ignored overnight. The ship is adrift in the Gulf of Oman. Not boarded, not seized, disabled. That's a named command, a named vessel, a named date, and a named action.
A missile into an engine room is not a blockade enforcement tool. That's a kinetic strike on a civilian cargo hull. The Gambia is a flag state. The shipping insurers writing policies on Gulf of Oman transits just got handed a hull loss scenario with a U.S. military return address.
And the timing is the collision I've been tracking all week. The Lian Star strike happened inside the window of the reported tentative 60-day ceasefire extension. An extension that, as of this morning, still belongs to an AP source not authorized to speak. Trump hasn't signed off on it. Arachi won't characterize the outcome. And CENTCOM is firing missiles at cargo ships.
This is exactly what tentative looks like in practice. The diplomats are drafting, Trump sends the text back for tougher language, and meanwhile the Navy is putting holes in engine rooms. The MOU stall thesis isn't a thesis anymore. It's the operating environment.
If Iran War Daily helps you track fast-moving risk, try Ebola Watch, a daily DRC and Uganda Ebola outbreak briefing with case counts, border tracing, WHO vaccine news, and traveler guidance. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. We've put links to every story we covered today in the show notes, so if one caught your ear, you can follow it there and read further. That's Iran War Daily for today. This is a Lantern podcast.